Well, my freckles are showing, so it's a good day, I guess. All right. Hey guys, welcome back. If you haven't been to my channel before, my name is Andrea, and my purpose is to bring hope and education to those suffering with chronic and environmental illness. Today I'm going to be talking about mast cell activation syndrome and histamine intolerance. So what are histamines? Histamines are immune-modulating enzymes that respond to pathogens, allergens, and are responsible for wound healing. Needless to say, they are very important. They are stored in two different types of cells, but we're going to focus on mast cells. Mast cells can be found in our tissues. Mast cells can be triggered to release immune mediators like histamines when they feel threatened by allergens, viruses, parasites, chemicals, or even heavy metals. The list really goes on with how many things can interrupt our immune system. When someone has mast cell activation syndrome, their mast cells respond to things that aren't necessarily life-threatening. You can say that their mast cells become super sensitive to pretty much everything around them. So what's the difference between mast cell and histamine intolerance? Well, they can both go hand in hand, but you can have one without the other. Most of the time, histamine intolerance is caused by mast cell activation syndrome though, but you can have histamine intolerance without having mast cell. Mast cell symptoms are usually more severe and caused by things like temperature change or smelling perfumes. While histamine intolerance is more of a delayed reaction, like consuming a food that's high in histamine. Now, mast cell activation syndrome is a fairly new diagnosis. While it's probably been around for a long time, they finally found a label to give it. Mast cell can develop from a host of different triggers, like mold, toxins, infections, food allergies, and even traumatic brain injuries. But you have to remember, mast cells just don't release histamine. They release things like tryptase and cytokines. As far as diagnosis goes with mast cell activation syndrome, there's a couple diagnostics that you have to meet in order to be diagnosed. You have to present with multiple organ system symptoms. So for example, you have irritable bowel syndrome and migraines. And of course, in severe cases, you will present with anaphylaxis. There are some blood work that you can do. You can check for elevated tryptase. And they will also, and medical doctors will usually put you on some type of antihistamine to see if your symptoms are relieved. You have to understand that this does not fix your problem. This is just a band-aid and/or symptom management. Most people with histamine intolerance have a couple things going on that isn't allowing their histamine bucket to be emptied. A couple examples are polar methylation, which can be caused by infections or gene mutations, or simply they're just being exposed to too many things that are high histamine. The problem with histamine intolerance is that it will get worse if you do not handle it. You can manage these two things in similar ways, like doing a low histamine diet, consuming a DAO enzyme. It's an enzyme that breaks down histamines. You take over-the-counter antihistamines or natural histamines, and of course, you can avoid triggers. If you really want to reverse and heal from this, you're going to have to find the root cause. Some root causes include infections like parasites, bacteria like Lyme disease, viruses or things like chemicals, heavy metals, and biotoxins like mold. Before I go any further, I want to talk a little bit about mold. So there's a difference between having a mold allergy and having mold illness. Having a mold allergy means that when you're exposed to mold, you're getting an IgE response. This can be measured on blood work that your allergist can do. Most of those symptoms include sneezing, headaches, rashes, things like that. But when you've been exposed to a biotoxin that mold produces called mycotoxins, your symptoms are going to be a little bit different. It's going to include things like irritable bowel syndrome, chronic fatigue, hormonal issues, neurological issues, brain fog. exacerbate any other things like Lyme disease, and it creates a systemic inflammation, which a lot of people know as CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I believe there are 3 things that you need to really focus in on when trying to heal mast cell activation syndrome or histamine intolerance. Number 1 would be to rewire the brain. Yes, the brain. Most people with chronic illness get stuck in a fight or flight response. This means that their parasympathetic or their rest and digest state is rarely activated. Our nervous system will regulate our mast cells, so if your brain thinks that you are being threatened, will tell your mast cells to release mediators like histamine. So rewiring your nervous system is super important so that your body knows that you are safe. Number 2, especially in people with severe cases, would be stabilizing the mast cells or reducing your histamine load. So taking things like quercetin, stinging nettle, or consuming foods with those things in it, like red onion, ginger, and dandelion root, can be helpful in stabilizing mast cells and reducing histamine. And third, which is the most important, is actually finding the root cause or the triggers to the mast cell and histamine issues. This would mean check your house for mold. Run functional labs to see if you have Lyme disease, SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth, severe insect stings, or even traumatic brain injuries. When you address these root causes, which normally people just don't have one, you're able to remove that trigger so your mast cells are not being constantly activated, or your histamine bucket isn't being constantly filled. I encourage you all, if you're dealing with symptoms related to histamines, to find somebody to work with. Navigating this can be really hard, and oftentimes medical doctors will dismiss you. But please remember that there's always hope for healing. If you like this video, comment below. I would love to know what you guys would like to hear next. Please like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep posting these videos. And as always, remember to eat your steak. In this case, don't eat any aged meat though, because that has high histamine. We'll see you next time.